While I was in labor, my husband was live streaming with his side chick, joking baby mama drama is peaking. He left me mid-contractions to pick her up from the airport. When I begged him to stay, he snapped. Don't guilt trip me. Her friends posted themselves wearing my maternity robe. The nurses held my hand as I gave birth alone. 3 days later, I sent everything to her pastor. I was 8 centimeters dilated when the nurse told me to stop scrolling. My hand was shaking, my phone slick with sweat, but I couldn't look away. The live stream had just started, his voice, my husband's voice, crackling through the hospital's sterile silence. Yeah, baby mama drama is peaking, he laughed into the camera, smirking at someone off-screen. But we chillin', ain't that right? A giggle followed, high-pitched, playful, female. I froze. The heart monitor beside me beeped faster, mirroring the pounding in my chest. My contractions were minutes apart, but that didn't hurt nearly as much as hearing her laugh through my husband's phone screen. The nurse thought I was crying from the pain. I wasn't. I was crying because the man I married was live streaming jokes about me while I was in labor with his child. I had sent him out an hour ago. He said he needed fresh air and a coffee run. He'd kissed my forehead, told me he'd be right back, told the nurses he just needed a minute. I believed him, because why wouldn't I? We'd been together since college, through eviction notices and cheap ramen nights, through his layoff and my double shifts. I thought I was his partner, his person. But the screen in my hand was showing me something else entirely. He was sitting in his car, grinning into the camera. His phone was propped up on the dashboard, the light from the screen catching his dimples, the same dimples I used to kiss every morning. He was wearing the hoodie I'd packed for him to stay warm in the hospital. He was laughing, talking to the chat, and right next to him was a woman I didn't recognize at first. Then she turned her head and kissed his cheek. That's when I realized. It was her, the girl from his marketing team. The one he swore was just a coworker. The one who called him boss man on Instagram and tagged him in every stupid coffee selfie. The one I'd asked him about 3 times, and each time he rolled his eyes and told me to stop being paranoid. The contraction hit hard. I screamed, but it wasn't from labor. It was from heartbreak. The nurse ran to my side. Breathe, honey, you're doing great. But I couldn't breathe. I could barely think. The chat on his live stream was full of laughing emojis, flame reactions, little comments like bro Wilden and she mad and hope baby mama don't find out. Too late. I texted him, where are you? He didn't answer. Another contraction hit. I clutched the rail, screaming his name, hoping maybe somehow he'd walk through that door and say it was all some messed up misunderstanding. Instead, a minute later my phone buzzed. A text. Babe chill, she just landed, I'll be back soon. Don't guilt trip me. That's when everything went dark for a second. The nurse was yelling for a doctor. I could hear my baby's heartbeat on the monitor, a frantic, tiny rhythm that matched mine. I wanted to scream, to rip the IV out and run after him, but I couldn't move. He left me mid-contraction to pick her up from the airport. I don't know how long I was out, but when I came to, the doctor was beside me. The nurse was holding my hand, whispering, he's not here, honey, but you're not alone. I gave birth alone that night. No husband, no father, just a team of strangers who cared more about me than the man who promised to love me in sickness and in health. When I finally held my son, I felt everything and nothing at once. His tiny fingers gripped mine like he knew. Like he already understood what kind of man his father was. 3 hours later, while I was still bleeding and trembling, her friends posted pictures from the hotel room. They were drinking champagne, laughing, and one of them was wearing my maternity robe. The pink one I'd packed for the hospital, the one that still had the tag from Target. Caption. When you win nail medium hiss queen. The comments were full of hearts. His account had liked it. I remember staring at that photo until my vision blurred. The nurse took my phone away. She said, you need rest, sweetheart. But all I could think was, they think they've won. 3 days later, when the baby and I were discharged, I didn't go home. I didn't call him. I didn't even text him. I sat in the car with my newborn in the back seat, looked up her name on Facebook, found her church, and messaged her pastor. I sent everything. The screenshots, the live stream, the photo in my robe, the timestamps from the night I was in labor. And then I waited. Because sometimes revenge isn't about shouting. It's about letting people destroy themselves and handing them the microphone while they do it. Before the hospital. Before the live stream. Before I even knew what betrayal really looked like, it was just me and Aaron, two broke 20-somethings trying to figure out adulthood in a tiny apartment in Richmond, Virginia. He used to make me laugh until I cried. That's what hooked me at first. He wasn't the type who took life too seriously. He'd say, "We'll make it, babe, just gotta grind and stay loyal." I clung to that word, loyal. Back then, loyalty was all I had to offer. I worked night shifts at St. Mary's Hospital as a CNA while he built his online marketing business. He was always one client away from a breakthrough. I covered the rent, the groceries, his car payment, because I believed in him. Every time he said, "Once I blow up, I'll take care of you," I believed it. And then he started getting attention online. At first it was small, TikToks about business hustle, motivational reels, corny quotes like "never fold under pressure." But the algorithm loved him. Soon he had followers, sponsors, networking trips. He started dressing different, talking different, acting like he was already famous. I told myself it was confidence, growth, but somewhere between fake it till you make it and content is king, Aaron stopped being my husband and started being a brand. It began with late-night calls I wasn't supposed to question. "Client stuff," he'd say. When I asked who he was talking to at 1 o'clock a.m., he'd laugh. "You really think I'd cheat when I'm this close to making it?" Then he hired her. Her name was Brianna, 23, fresh out of VCU, blonde extensions, loud laugh, one of those girls who called everyone babe. She handled his social media, according to him. "She's hungry like me," he said. "You should like her." I didn't, not because I was insecure, but because she called him Aaron. No one else did, not even his mom. The first red flag was small. She started showing up at our apartment for work meetings. They'd sit at the kitchen table with her laptop open, laughing about hashtags and engagement rates. She'd come in low-cut tops, smelling like coconut lotion, while I'd be in scrubs, exhausted from 12-hour shifts. Once she saw my hospital badge on the counter and said, "Awa, you're like the real-life version of those nurse TikToks," and giggled. Aaron laughed too. I didn't. Another time, I overheard her say, "You should make content about your relationship. People love seeing real couples." He said, "Nah, she's not into that." And that was true, I wasn't. I didn't want my relationship to be content. I wanted it to be ours. Then the messages started. A random follower DM'd me a screenshot. Brianna had posted a story from Aaron's couch. My couch. She tagged #workgrind. I confronted him that night. I was pregnant by then, 3 months. I told him it made me uncomfortable. He sighed like I was a child interrupting his game. "She's literally my employee. You gotta stop tripping." He gaslit me with smooth calmness, like a professional liar who'd rehearsed his lines. "You're hormonal, babe. You're insecure because of the pregnancy. She's just helping me build something for us." I wanted to believe him so badly, so I stopped bringing it up. The months passed. My belly grew. He started traveling, business conventions, collaborations. I stayed home, painting the nursery, folding tiny onesies, waiting for his calls that came later and later each night. When he came home, he'd scroll through his phone more than he'd look at me. I'd ask if he wanted to feel the baby kick, and he'd say, "In a sec," never looking up. I used to think emotional neglect was something you only read about in self-help books. But there's a very specific kind of loneliness that comes from being married to someone who's always almost present. Still, I told myself he loved me, that he was just overwhelmed, that when the baby came, everything would fall back into place. But the week before I went into labor, he started sleeping in the guest room, said he needed quiet to focus. I remember standing in the doorway one night, my belly heavy and sore, watching him scroll through his phone, smiling at something. I asked what was funny. He said, "Just a meme." I would find out later that it wasn't a meme. It was a private video from her. The night before the hospital, he was restless, pacing, distracted. He didn't pack a bag. Didn't ask how I felt, just kept checking flight times on his phone. I remember saying, "You seem off. Are you okay?" He said, "You always think something's wrong." And when my contractions started early the next morning, he drove me to the hospital in silence. He dropped me off at the entrance and said he'd park the car. He didn't come back for almost an hour. When he finally did, he said he had to take a call. I didn't know that call was to Brianna, coordinating her flight to Richmond International Airport. That same night, while I was begging him to stay through the pain, she was boarding a plane to meet him. And I was about to find out exactly how far he'd go to keep up his little social media fantasy, no matter who it destroyed. The morning after I gave birth, the world felt wrong. The light in the hospital room was too bright. The air too cold. Everything around me looked like a set piece from someone else's life. My son was swaddled beside me in the plastic bassinet, sleeping soundly. I watched his chest rise and fall, and for a brief moment, I felt peace. Then my phone buzzed. It was Aaron. Aaron, how's the baby? Me, he's perfect, you should come meet him. Aaron, can't RN, still dealing with some business stuff, you know how it is. Business stuff. That phrase hit differently now. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. He hadn't even asked what we named him. No, I love you. No, I'm sorry. Just a cold, detached message like I was an inconvenience, not his wife who had just pushed out his child. When the nurse came in to check my vitals, she looked at me with that soft, pitying look people get when they know you've been humiliated. I didn't want her pity, I wanted my dignity back. But that was already being broadcast to the world. By noon, his live stream was everywhere. Someone had screen recorded it and posted it to a gossip page that covered local influencers. The caption read, "Local entrepreneur jokes about baby mama drama while girlfriend watches him leave baby's birth for her." The comments were brutal. Some people laughed, others dragged him. But what really broke me were the ones saying things like, "She must have known," and "He's just keeping it real." As if I had asked to be publicly humiliated. I didn't respond. I didn't post. I didn't even tell my mom, who was driving down from Roanoke that evening to meet her grandson. I just sat there, numb, rocking my baby and wondering how my life had exploded so fast. That night, I finally got a text from him. "Aaron, yo, don't freak out, the internet's just talking, let it blow over." Me, "You left me while I was in labor." Aaron, "You're being dramatic, you had nurses, the baby's fine. I'll come by in a few days once the heat dies down." That was the moment something inside me snapped, not in a loud, screaming kind of way. More like when a rope finally gives after being pulled too tight for too long. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I just typed one message back: "Don't bother." 3 days later, when I was discharged, I went to my sister's place in Henrico. She had a spare room and a look in her eyes that said she wouldn't ask questions until I was ready. I unpacked slowly, one thing at a time: diapers, wipes, the hospital paperwork. Then I found my maternity robe. Except it wasn't my robe anymore. It was hers. The same robe from the photos. It still smelled faintly like hotel perfume and cheap champagne. That smell triggered something in me, something primal, angry, raw. I sat down on the bed and started scrolling through Brianna's social media. She was posting like nothing had happened. Pictures of brunch, a mirror selfie captioned, "God's timing is perfect, Dizzy," and worst of all, a new photo with Aaron. They were sitting in a pew, smiling. He had on the same hoodie from the live stream. She tagged the church and the location. It was Sunday, 3 days after my delivery. While I was healing from stitches and feeding our newborn alone, he was taking his side chick to church. The irony made me sick. I dug deeper. She'd been posting cryptic Bible verses all week, stuff about forgiveness, renewal, God's blessings in unexpected forms. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone against the wall. But instead, I started collecting everything. Screenshots, timestamps, every photo, every comment, every detail, the robe picture, the live stream clip, his texts to me, her captions. I compiled it all into a single folder labeled proof. Because deep down, I already knew how people like them operated. Aaron was a performer, and she was his new audience. They didn't care about truth, they cared about image. So I was going to use that image against them. But I didn't move yet. I wanted to make sure my hit landed where it hurt the most. His reputation, her purity act, their picture-perfect facade. That's when I saw it. On her church's page, there was an upcoming post about her being part of the worship team. She'd be leading the congregation next Sunday. The comments were full of "So proud of you, Bri," and "Our shining light." My stomach turned. This was the same woman who'd laughed while I screamed through contractions, who'd worn my robe while holding my husband's hand in a hotel room, who'd mocked me publicly and acted wholly privately. And suddenly, I knew exactly where to aim. But before I could send anything, something else happened, something that changed everything. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. When I picked up, a woman's voice whispered, "You don't know me, but you need to hear this about Aaron." My chest tightened. Who is this? She said her name was Marissa, and she wasn't calling from Virginia. She was calling from Texas. When she said her name was Marissa, I almost hung up. My brain was fried, my baby was crying, and the last thing I needed was another stranger inserting themselves into the chaos. But then she said Aaron's full name, his full government name, middle included. And my stomach dropped. He told me he was in Richmond for work, she said, her voice trembling. But I saw the live stream, I saw you. I froze. What do you mean you saw me? You were the one giving birth, right? The one he said was causing baby mama drama. I felt the air leave my lungs. Marissa went on before I could answer. I've been with him for 3 years. I thought I was his fiancé. The room spun. My baby started fussing in the bassinet beside me, and I had to sit down just to keep from collapsing. My husband, the man who'd left me mid-contraction to pick up his side chick, was already engaged to another woman in Texas. It didn't make sense at first. My mind was too foggy to connect the dots. But she kept talking, spilling details that made my blood run cold. They met online, through one of his business mentorship groups. He'd flown out to see her multiple times, claiming he was traveling for brand deals. She'd been helping him build his empire, investing her own savings into his fake company. I gave him $25,000, she said, her voice cracking. He said it was for marketing expansion. I thought we were building a life together. I sat there silent for a moment, letting the truth sink in like poison. He wasn't just a cheater, he was a con artist, and I wasn't his only victim. Marissa started crying on the phone. When I saw that video of him laughing while you were in labor, I realized I wasn't special. None of us were. Us, I said. That's when she hesitated. Then she said something that made my knees go weak. There's another one, out in Chicago. I only found out because she messaged me after the live stream went viral. She said she's been seeing him since last year. For a few seconds, I couldn't even speak. The sound of my own heartbeat filled the silence. Aaron wasn't living a double life. He was living 3. And I'd been so focused on the girl he left me for that I hadn't seen the bigger picture. He wasn't just sleeping around. He was building parallel relationships, using women like business models. I paid the bills when he was broke. Marissa funded his fake company, and the girl from Chicago. She was apparently running some of his social accounts, doing free work because she thought she was his partner in success. It was like he'd turned women into revenue streams. I asked Marissa how she found me. She said someone in a gossip forum had linked my name to the hospital he mentioned in the live stream. She'd called around until she reached the maternity ward. I didn't want to believe it, she said. But then the nurse said you'd given birth alone. That's when I knew. I remember sitting there, staring at the wall, feeling like my body wasn't my own anymore. Like every version of my life had been hijacked by a man who'd been performing love just to get what he wanted. Then Marissa said something that changed everything again. He told me you died. My grip on the phone tightened. What? He said you died in childbirth. That's what he told me when people online started tagging him in the video. He said you didn't make it and that everyone was spreading lies. For a few seconds, I couldn't even breathe. The words echoed inside my skull like gunshots. He'd told people I was dead. I started shaking. My baby began to cry, startled by the sound of my breath coming in sharp, ragged gasps. I picked him up and held him tight, whispering, I'm here, even though I didn't know who I was saying it for, him or myself. Marissa apologized over and over. She said she'd send me everything she had, screenshots, receipts, DMs, wire transfers. She said she didn't know what to do, but I did. Because the second she hung up, everything inside me went cold. This wasn't just infidelity anymore. This was fraud, deception, defamation. And if Aaron thought I was going to just crumble quietly, he was about to learn how wrong he was. Before I did anything, though, I wanted to see him. I wanted to look him in the eyes and make him say it, make him confront what he'd done. So I called him. He picked up on the second ring, voice casual, like nothing had happened. Yo, what's up? Where are you? I asked. Out handling some stuff. With Brianna, a pause, then, why you asking? I didn't answer. I just said, I know about Marissa. The silence that followed was the longest of my life. Then he said, calm as ever, you've been talking to people you shouldn't. That's when it hit me. He wasn't even surprised. Not sorry, not scared. Just irritated. He said, you don't get it, you're not supposed to get it. I said, you told people I died. And he laughed. "You might as well be," he said. "You're irrelevant now. The brand's bigger than you." That was the last time I ever heard his voice. When I hung up, I felt something inside me settle. A quiet kind of rage that didn't scream or cry, it planned. I wasn't going to chase him. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to erase him. Because if he wanted to play God online, I was going to make sure every single person saw the truth behind his altar. When I hung up on Aaron that night, I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there, rocking my newborn while staring at the wall. My mind wasn't thinking in emotions anymore, it was calculating. I had been humiliated, abandoned, lied about, and publicly erased. But now, I had something Aaron didn't. I had proof. And proof, when placed in the right hands, is power. I started small. First, I created a new email account under a neutral name, no trace to me. I called it Truth Report Richmond. Then I started organizing the evidence. Every screenshot, every video, every text. I added timestamps, summaries, captions. I even transcribed the parts of his live stream where he joked about baby mama drama. The file grew quickly, 47 items in total. But I wasn't done. Marissa and I began talking every day. We compared notes, piecing together his timeline like detectives. We found overlapping dates, duplicate excuses, identical business trip photos he'd sent us both, but with different captions. He'd even used the same hotel room for different women, same angle, same mirror selfie. That was when I realized this wasn't random cheating. It was patterned manipulation. Aaron built his relationships like a business funnel, each woman a source of money, validation, or labor. I gave him emotional stability. Marissa gave him funding. Brianna gave him publicity. And he gave us all lies. I told Marissa about Brianna's church, about the upcoming Sunday where she was supposed to sing on stage. Marissa went quiet for a moment, then said, "You thinking what I'm thinking?" I was. If Brianna wanted to present herself as holy, pure, blessed, then that image was the most fragile thing in her world. And Aaron, his brand depended entirely on credibility. Sponsors, partnerships, speaking gigs, all of it built on him being the successful entrepreneur with a strong moral compass. The truth would burn through that facade like gasoline, so I started mapping out a plan. Step 1. Gather everything visual. Screenshots were good, but video was better. I clipped the live stream into shorter segments, one where he laughed, one where he said baby mama drama, one where she kissed his cheek. Then I inserted timestamps from my hospital record to show I was in labor at that exact time. Step 2. Build a timeline. I combined everything Marissa and I knew dates of his flights, the wire transfers, the photos he'd sent her, the texts to me and Brianna. The overlap was undeniable. Step 3. Distribution. I didn't want to just post it online. I didn't want to get dismissed as another angry ex. I wanted it to hit in places that mattered. The places that could dismantle both of them socially and professionally. So I made 3 targets, his sponsors. He had brand deals with a few local businesses, fitness supplements, a car dealership, and one leadership coaching platform. Her church, the pastor, the leadership board, the women's ministry group, their audience. His followers, the people who worshipped his realness. But before launching, I wanted confirmation, proof beyond screenshots. So I reached out to the girl from Chicago, the third woman Marissa mentioned. Her name was Taylor. She didn't answer for 2 days, but when she finally did, she sent me a voice note. Her voice was shaky, angry, raw. "He told me you were just a surrogate," she said. "He said you were carrying for him and Brianna because she couldn't have kids." I swear I almost dropped my phone. He had told people I was their surrogate. And that was when I knew exactly how deep his lies went. Aaron wasn't just manipulating for sex or money. He was rewriting reality to suit his narrative. Every woman got a different version of the truth, tailored to what she'd most likely believe. And each lie was more disgusting than the last. After Taylor's message, I called Marissa again. We talked for hours that night, building what we jokingly called the case file. It wasn't about petty revenge anymore. It was about exposing a man who had built a career on exploiting women. By the end of the call, we had a 76-page document. Screenshots, photos, transcripts, flight confirmations, business filings, everything. We divided responsibilities. Marissa would reach out to the brand partners. Taylor would contact his speaking event organizers. And I, being the dead wife, would handle the church. The next Sunday, I got dressed early, not to attend service, but to sit in my car outside Brianna's church. About the upcoming Sunday where she was supposed to sing on stage. Marissa went quiet for a moment, then said, "You thinking what I'm thinking?" I was. If Brianna wanted to present herself as holy, pure, blessed, then that image was the most fragile thing in her world. And Aaron, his brand depended entirely on credibility. Sponsors, partnerships, speaking gigs, all of it built on him being the successful entrepreneur with a strong moral compass. The truth would burn through that facade like gasoline. So I started mapping out a plan. Step 1, gather everything visual. Screenshots were good, but video was better. I clipped the live stream into shorter segments, one where he laughed, one where he said baby mama drama, one where she kissed his cheek. Then I inserted timestamps from my hospital record to show I was in labor at that exact time. Step 2, build a timeline. I combined everything Marissa and I knew dates of his flights, the wire transfers, the photos he'd sent her, the texts to me and Brianna. The overlap was undeniable. Step 3, distribution. I didn't want to just post it online. I didn't want to get dismissed as another angry ex. I wanted it to hit in places that mattered. The places that could dismantle both of them socially and professionally. So I made 3 targets, his sponsors. He had brand deals with a few local businesses, fitness supplements, a car dealership, and one leadership coaching platform. Her church, the pastor, the leadership board, the women's ministry group, their audience, his followers, the people who worshipped his realness. But before launching, I wanted confirmation, proof beyond screenshots. So I reached out to the girl from Chicago, the third woman Marissa mentioned. Her name was Taylor. She didn't answer for 2 days, but when she finally did, she sent me a voice note. Her voice was shaky, angry, raw. "He told me you were just a surrogate," she said. "He said you were carrying for him and Brianna because she couldn't have kids." I swear I almost dropped my phone. He had told people I was their surrogate. And that was when I knew exactly how deep his lies went. Aaron wasn't just manipulating for sex or money. He was rewriting reality to suit his narrative. Every woman got a different version of the truth, tailored to what she'd most likely believe. And each lie was more disgusting than the last. After Taylor's message, I called Marissa again. We talked for hours that night, building what we jokingly called the case file. It wasn't about petty revenge anymore. It was about exposing a man who had built a career on exploiting women. By the end of the call, we had a 76-page document. Screenshots, photos, transcripts, flight confirmations, business filings, everything. We divided responsibilities. Marissa would reach out to the brand partners. Taylor would contact his speaking event organizers. And I, being the dead wife, would handle the church. The next Sunday, I got dressed early. Not to attend service, but to sit in my car outside Brianna's church. My baby was in the backseat, sleeping, while I watched people file in through the glass doors. 10 minutes before the service started, I emailed the pastor. Subject line, urgent. The truth about your worship leader inside was the entire folder. Photos, videos, the robe picture, the live stream. The proof that while their sister in Christ was singing hymns, she'd been sleeping with a married man and mocking a woman giving birth to his child. I hit send, took a deep breath, and watched as the pastor's assistant opened her phone inside the lobby. I could see her freeze. Then she whispered something to a man in a suit. He frowned, looked down at his own phone, and walked quickly toward the back hallway. 5 minutes later, the lights dimmed inside. Music started, but Brianna didn't come out to sing. My phone buzzed, an email reply from the church's address. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We are handling this matter immediately." My pulse thundered in my ears. Then, 15 minutes later, Aaron went live. I clicked in instantly. His face was pale, his eyes wide. The chat was exploding with messages, people asking about the wife, the baby, the church email. He looked straight into the camera and said, "Y'all don't know the full story." But this time, he wasn't smirking. He wasn't laughing. He was cornered. And I wasn't done yet. Because while he was trying to control the narrative online, Marissa and Taylor were already sending the case file to his sponsors, and one of them had already replied. "We do not condone unethical or fraudulent behavior. Effective immediately, our partnership with Aaron K. is terminated." By the end of that day, his Instagram went dark. Sponsors dropped him. His followers were demanding answers. And the gossip accounts that once hyped him up were now tearing him apart. But the true collapse, the one that left him with nothing, was still coming. Because I hadn't told him yet about what I found buried in his business files. Something he thought I'd never see, something that made every lie even more monstrous. The night everything went public, I didn't sleep. The baby woke every few hours, and between feedings, I watched the fallout unfold like a live movie. Aaron's social media empire was collapsing in real time. Sponsors gone. Followers turning. Brianna's church page had quietly deleted every post featuring her. But I wasn't celebrating, not yet, because I still had one thing left to check. Aaron had always been obsessive about his business. Even when he was broke, he'd talk like he was running a Fortune 500 company out of our one-bedroom apartment. He used terms like leverage, branding, lead funnels. I'd laugh, but he'd look at me dead serious and say, "You don't get it, babe, this is how we get rich." When I found his old laptop in our storage bin, I decided to see exactly what he'd been building. It took me half the night to guess the password, loyalty still matters. The irony almost made me choke. Once I got in, I started digging through his folders. Most of it was junk, half-finished PowerPoints, fake client proposals, Canva logos for businesses that didn't exist. But then I found one folder that was password protected. It was labeled Clients 2023. I used his birthday as the password. It opened instantly. Inside were Excel sheets, PayPal receipts, wire transfers, all under different business names. But the names of the senders stopped me cold. Mine, Marissa's, Taylor's, and 6 more women I didn't recognize. Each of us had invested thousands. Some payments were labeled as business capital, others as marketing retainers, but the total amount blew my mind. $187,000. That's how much he'd taken, mostly from women. And not just women he'd dated. There were invoices from mentorship clients, 2 young women who'd signed up for his success coaching. I opened one of the PDFs and saw his pitch deck. It said, "I teach ambitious women how to find financial independence through self-branding and emotional discipline." Under that, testimonials, 3 photos, all women I now knew were his victims, including me. He'd stolen our words, our stories, and turned them into fake success reviews. It wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was a scam. Every client was a woman he'd emotionally entangled. He'd start as a mentor or business coach, then turn it personal, romantic. He'd make them feel special, make them invest in his dream, then move on to the next one. And the most disgusting part, the account that all those transfers went to, the one labeled AK Marketing LLC, it wasn't a business account. It was Brianna's, her name, her address, her bank routing number. They'd been running the scam together. All those months I thought she was just the side chick. She was his partner, and not just in bed, in crime. They'd taken money from women, told each of them a slightly different story, some romantic, some entrepreneurial, but all ending the same way. Deposits to that same account. And when I looked at the timestamps, the pattern made my stomach turn. While I was pregnant, they were still scamming. While I was working double shifts to pay rent, they were wiring money out of my joint account into hers. That's where the $7,500 business expense I'd argued with him about last year had gone. I thought it was a tax payment. It was a transfer to Brianna's account. The rage that hit me then was cold, clear, and precise. I wasn't just exposing a liar anymore. I was building a criminal case. I called Marissa first, told her what I found. She went silent for a long time, then said, "He told me he was saving for our wedding." I said, "He was, yours, mine, and 6 others." She exhaled hard. "You're going to the police, right?" "Yes," I said. "But not before I finish this." Because Aaron's greatest addiction wasn't women, it was attention. And I was about to feed him a dose of it he couldn't control. I copied the files, screenshots, and receipts into one new folder. I called it the Empire of Lies. Then I sent it to 3 places: the Richmond PD Fraud Division, the Virginia Attorney General's Office, Consumer Protection, a journalist from the Richmond Times-Dispatch who'd once interviewed him for a local entrepreneur success article. The story was about to go public, not as gossip, but as news. Then I sent one last message to Aaron. No words, just a screenshot of his folder with the subject line, "You built your empire on women." I just lit the match. He didn't reply that night. But the next morning, his name was everywhere again. not as a motivational coach, but as the subject of a criminal investigation for fraud, identity misuse, and financial exploitation. By noon, Brianna deleted all her accounts. The church put out a statement saying she'd been removed from leadership pending investigation. Marissa texted me, "They're both done, but there's one more thing you should know." She sent a photo of a printed business certificate she'd found in her emails. Aaron had registered a new LLC the month before I gave birth. The name stopped my heart cold. Loyalty Group Holdings, Inc., under authorized officer, 2 names were listed. Aaron King, Brianna King. He had married her. Secretly, while I was pregnant, while I still wore his ring. And she'd taken his last name. When I saw the marriage certificate, I didn't feel shock anymore. I felt recognition. Like I had finally reached the rotten core of who Aaron really was. I called Marissa right after she sent it. "How long ago?" I asked. She said, "A month before your due date." I stared at the photo of the certificate on my screen. The date was circled in blue ink, 1 week after he'd taken a business trip to Atlanta. That trip where he came home late, smelling like new cologne, acting like he'd just landed a massive deal. I remember that night now in painful detail. I was sitting on the couch, 7 months pregnant, asking him if we were still okay. He looked at me and said, "Of course we are, babe, you'll see." That's the night he was already legally married to her. And not for love, not for lust, for leverage. When the fraud division investigator finally called me, she asked if I wanted to make an official statement. I told her yes, and I emailed everything, every document, every text, every file. A week later, she called again. Her voice was calm but heavy. She said, "You should know this isn't just about emotional manipulation. There's a financial motive tied to his new marriage." Apparently, after marrying Brianna, he'd applied for a joint business loan using my name as a guarantor, claiming I was a deceased former partner. They had forged my signature. The loan was for $80,000. And when I looked at the paperwork, it all made sense. The reason he told everyone I died, the reason he married her, the reason he kept the charade going even after the live stream blew up. It wasn't chaos. It was strategy. He needed me dead on paper to clear his path to new capital. I asked the investigator if the bank had processed it. She said it was still pending because of the ongoing fraud reports. She also said his financial trail went back further. Years of small loans, fake invoices, and investments that never existed. Aaron wasn't trying to build an empire. He was trying to build a shield. A network of lies so layered that by the time anyone realized they'd been scammed, he was already on to the next one. But what made it all truly monstrous wasn't just the money. It was how he targeted people. Every woman he chose had something in common. They were givers. Women who nurtured, who believed in potential, who saw the best in broken people. He read us like case studies. He knew exactly what to say, when to apologize, when to cry. To me, it was the "you're my rock" speech. To Marissa, it was "you're the only one who believes in me." To Brianna, it was "you're my equal." You get the vision. He built his empire out of empathy, harvesting compassion like currency. And when he was done draining it, he'd move on, leaving behind ghosts. When I looked at the marriage certificate again, I realized the timing was precise. He'd married Brianna right before I went into my 3rd trimester. That way, if something happened to me, or if he could make it look like something did, he could claim our assets as a widower. That's why he told people I died. Not because he was cruel, though he was, but because it made him money. The investigator said, "He's done this before, not with marriage but with identity manipulation. You're not the first person he's declared dead." That sentence made my blood run cold. Apparently, 2 years earlier, a woman in Dallas had reported a similar scheme. She had dated Aaron when he went by a slightly different alias, A.K. Morrison. She'd invested $15,000 into a startup, and when she tried to get her money back, she found out he'd told others she passed away unexpectedly. No one had believed her at the time, but now. The pattern was clear. Aaron was a predator who'd weaponized grief and guilt for profit. He'd marry women, promise stability, then disappear with money and leave behind a story that made himself the victim. Each time, he'd rewrite the narrative, cashing in sympathy while his targets were too broken or too embarrassed to fight back. I realized then that every moment I'd spent trying to make sense of his behavior, every fight, every tear, every second of confusion, had been part of his calculation. He needed me to doubt myself, needed me to shrink, apologize, stay quiet, because silence was his favorite currency. But I wasn't going to be silent anymore. When the investigator asked if I wanted to press charges, I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said. Every single one. She told me the process would take months. But in the meantime, the media was already circling the story. The journalist I'd contacted wanted to run an exposé. She'd found multiple women with identical experiences. And I knew that if I didn't step up, he'd find another target. So I agreed to speak on record. Not for fame, not for pity, for closure. The night before the article ran, I stayed up late holding my baby. He was cooing, eyes half open, looking up at me like I was his whole world. I thought about Aaron, about how, even in the hospital, some small part of me had wanted him to come back, to say he was sorry, to make it make sense. But there was no sense. There never had been. He hadn't loved me or Brianna or Marissa. He'd loved the control. The way we all reflected back the version of himself he wanted to believe in. The truth was simple and horrifying. Aaron didn't destroy me because he stopped loving me. He destroyed me because it was useful. Because to him, I was just another asset to liquidate. The morning the article dropped, Richmond woke up to my story. Front page of the Times-Dispatch. Local influencer accused of exploiting women in multi-state fraud scheme. Byline, victims speak out. His name was in the headline. Mine wasn't by my request, but everyone who knew us knew. The article went viral within hours. The comments were relentless. People who once worshipped him as a self-made king were now calling him a predator, a liar, a thief. It wasn't just gossip anymore, it was evidence. Public, permanent. By noon, I got the message I'd been waiting for from the investigator. Warrants issued. He's in custody. I just stared at those words for a long time. They didn't bring joy, not right away. It was more like relief, like taking your first real breath after being underwater too long. Aaron had been arrested outside a motel in Charlotte, North Carolina. He'd been trying to withdraw cash from an ATM with a fake ID under the name Alan Morris. They found 3 phones on him, each with different contact names for the same women. The news stations picked up the story. His mugshot spread fast. The comments online were brutal, but I didn't feel sorry. He'd made a living off of humiliation. It was only right he got swallowed by it. Meanwhile, Brianna's rebrand didn't last long. Within a week, her church publicly denounced her involvement. She deleted all her socials. Her name appeared in the investigation filings as a co-conspirator, pending financial review. Marissa and Taylor called me that night. None of us said much at first. We just sat in silence, listening to each other breathe. Survivors all tied to the same monster. Finally, Marissa said, "You did it." But I shook my head even though she couldn't see. We did, because it wasn't just revenge anymore, it was reclamation. Still, the victory was messy. Healing never looks neat. The weeks after were filled with paperwork, lawyers, media requests. My name eventually came out when the court filings became public. Some people tried to spin it. She just wants attention. She's bitter. But others saw through it. Especially other women. I started getting messages, hundreds of them, from women who'd been gaslit, manipulated, erased. Some didn't even know Aaron but saw themselves in my story. "Thank you for saying what I couldn't," one message read. That one broke me, because I knew that feeling too well, the choking silence of betrayal, the shame that keeps you quiet. 2 months later, the trial began. He didn't look at me once. He came in clean-shaven, in a cheap suit, still trying to control the narrative. His lawyer argued that I was vengeful and emotionally unstable from postpartum distress. I almost laughed in court. The prosecutor projected his own live stream onto the screen. The video of him laughing, saying baby mama drama is peaking, while I was in labor. The whole courtroom went dead silent. Even the judge's jaw tightened. That video was the nail in his coffin. The jury took 4 hours, guilty on 7 counts of fraud, 2 counts of identity misuse, and 1 count of falsifying legal documents. Sentence, 8 years minimum. When the verdict was read, I didn't cry. I just held my son tighter, his tiny hand gripping my finger like he somehow knew what this moment meant. After court, I walked outside into the late spring air. Marissa and Taylor were waiting for me on the steps. We didn't say much, just hugged. I drove home that day with the windows down, the sun finally warm on my face. For the first time since the hospital, the air didn't feel heavy. In the weeks that followed, I got small pieces of my life back. Sleep, appetite, laughter sometimes. My sister helped me set up a small Etsy shop for baby blankets, something quiet, mine. I didn't post about it. I didn't chase clout, I just wanted peace. One afternoon, I got a letter from the correctional facility. His handwriting on the envelope. I didn't open it. I just burned it in the sink. Watched the paper curl and turn to ash. He'd had enough of my life. He didn't get one more second. A few months later, the church quietly reached out with an apology. The pastor said Brianna had confessed to everything, her role in the fraud, the fake accounts, even helping forge the marriage paperwork. Apparently, she'd told him she thought Aaron really loved her. I didn't respond. Because that's the cruel thing about men like Aaron, they don't love anyone. They love the power of being loved. And I'd finally taken that away from him. The last I heard, he was trying to start a redemption program for inmates. Of course he was. The performance never ends. But that's his new audience now, 4 walls and a bunk. Me, I'm fine, better than fine. My son's first birthday was small but perfect. Balloons, cake, my sister and mom, laughter echoing in the kitchen. I caught myself smiling in a way I hadn't in years. I looked at him, this tiny life that survived all that darkness, and I thought, he'll never have to wonder if he's enough. I'll make sure of it. As I tucked him into bed that night, I whispered, "You changed everything, baby." Because he had. Aaron built an empire on lies. I built a new life on the ashes. And sometimes, that's the sweetest revenge of all, to keep living when they swore you wouldn't.